Okay, welcome back. Wow. Wall to wall, every day for many of you out there. I really feel for all the people who have lost everything. They've lost their jobs, their businesses. In my area, remember 2 nights ago when I was talking about the fire nearby, a couple miles away, and it burned west away from where I am? Over 600 homes, minimum, were leveled. They're just ashes. That's it. And over 100 businesses. So there are an aggregate of at least, 3,000 people who are homeless tonight in this country, which continues to fade rapidly from the once brilliant luster it used to hold on the world stage. It's not there anymore. And this isn't the only one. Australia, which used to be looked upon as a remarkable, safe, open, honorable, fair, and beautiful country to go to, an outlet, a place to run to, a place to relocate, a place to become a citizen in. And then what happened? The communists got in there, the international globalist, communist, Zionist elite, and they took the guns away from the people. What has happened since then is something that I'm sure most all of you regular listeners can fill in the blanks about. Those poor people are so under the boot now of permanent hegemony and domination, surveillance. It's brutal what's going on in the state of Victoria and the governor of that state. And it's the first topic we're going to talk about tonight with Victor Altomare. He is down there. I've known Victor through the internet for many years. He's a very, very bright man who understands the big picture, and he's offered to come on tonight to try to spread the word about the true Bolshevik horror that is going on in Victoria, Australia. Victor, welcome back. Actually, I think it's your first, maybe your second visit, but anyhow, welcome aboard. Glad to talk to you, and let's get into this situation. How long have you lived in Australia, by the way?
Jeff, my family migrated here when I was 1 year old back in 1957. I've lived here for most of my life. I lived for a period of about 10 years in the United States, traveling sometimes back to Australia frequently, but mainly in the United States, in Las Vegas, in fact, your old hometown.
Well, that's where, that is. Well, I was in the hometown. I worked there 3 years. But that's where we first got acquainted when you were there. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, look, I was there on West Hacienda in South Dakota. That's where I lived, and I was undertaking some property developments on the Strip in Vegas with the ex-wife of your president, Ivana Trump.
You worked with Ivana? How interesting. That is wild. Yeah. Wild stuff. You didn't tell me that back then. Yeah.
Much to my chagrin, Donald and I had some words about her, and I remember one day I was at a car wash and I was complaining to him about her, and he said, "Look, she's all your problem now, buddy. You keep her."
Is that? Oh, that's hysterical. That's really funny. The conversations that happen in car washes. Donald said that to you. Jeez, that's hilarious.
Something even more hilarious happened to me, and I was driving up Las Vegas Boulevard with Ivana in the car, and we'd just been to a photo shoot. And I said, just offhand, I said, "Listen, so what's driving Donald? You know, because he was doing a property development at the same time I was, which was a competing development. Yeah. We were redeveloping a casino at the time and building a hotel and condo tower." And she said to me, like, he's on a mission. And I said, "What you mean, like on a mission from God, like the Blues Brothers?" And of course, it went right above her head because she was very English, and I suppose she didn't get the cultural.
Well, you can write it off to a lack of English adaptability, sure, but in reality, one wonders: is she a sharp cookie at all in her own language?
She's exactly how she appears. She's look, she wanted to outdo Donald. She wanted to be the boots in the family, wear the shoes
Yeah.
and the pants and everything else, to be, for that matter of fact. And of course, that didn't cut well with Donald, and they parted ways.
A match made
Look,
in hell.
They still talk because of the kids,
Yeah.
and I have met the kid. And they're pretty much like, probably the nicest of them is Eric, actually, who's running the Trump business at the moment, the hotels, golf courses, and so forth. The poor boy's suffering a little bit under the weight of the debt that the company's carrying. I mean, it's destroyed Donald's personal business, this presidency. I don't know why he did it, but maybe he's on a mission from God, and that's why the evangelicals are following him.
Now, this is when she said he's on a mission, she was alluding to some spirituality here. Is that what we're talking about?
Look, she's not that bright. I mean, she's cunning. There's no question about that. But I think she knew. Look, the family knew that he was destined to be president. He knew that he was on a pathway to be. No question about that. He knew that, and I also believe that from what I just talking to some of the family members, that he really believed he was a man for this time. For the millennial. That he was going to bring home the dreams of the evangelicals. For eschatology.
A couple things. One, the Christian, and in this country, the Christian Zionist evangelicals number about 45 million Americans. Now, they think Israel is the cat's meow. That fits right in with Donald and his son-in-law and the princess, who are Lubavitcher Jews. They are dual citizens. I'm sure Jared is. This is a very interesting story. Now, let me just take it another minute or two, then we'll jump into the meat of the program here. Maybe this is the meat of the program. The idea that Donald had a feeling or a drive that he wanted to be or was destined to be president apparently goes back quite a ways. I've read that this is all planned out a decade or two or three in advance, and he may have been told back then that you're going to be president.
You nailed it.
I did.
He knew.
Thank you. All right. We'll talk more about this perhaps another time. That is fascinating information. I just had a hunch. Okay. All right. Now, Victor has been watching what's going on in his country. This is really medieval stuff. The way that the police have turned on the people, on their own people, and some of the videos that I've seen are stunning, shocking. This is East Germany. This is Stasi stuff. Make no mistake about it. Backed up with a governor and certainly a state administration that is utterly unconcerned about the welfare of the people. I don't care what they say. I know what's going on. The medical tyranny over there is also over the top, disgusting. Tell us what you see. Tell us how this all came to be. Give me your take on this.
Okay. I'll tell you what's happening, but before I do, I'll give all Americans that are listening tonight a warning. And do not give up your Second Amendment. Under no circumstances let them take your guns. Absolutely not. You'll be disempowered and you'll become like us. We're prisoners in an open gulag at the moment, subjugated by a governor, a premier we call them here, but governor for you, who's just gone off the reservation, totally rogue. And I'll tell you some of the things that he's doing. But before I do, I need to tell you something, that Melbourne is ground zero globally for a number of reasons. Because how could it happen, essentially for a liberal democratic democracy here that was open, free, carefree. Melbourne is one of the strong cities network of the world. And this is a global organisation, NGO, based in London, of whose board consists of many trilateral commissions and the usual bunch of criminals that you know about. Melbourne joined the Strong Cities Network, and America has got a number of them as well, and they just happen to be the cities where Antifa and BLM are running riots at the moment.
Well, let me name first of all, look in Guests, please, all of you. Look under Victor's name, and you'll see Strong Cities in Victoria, Australia, and how that program has been implemented. This is like a big beta test down there, to me. Beware of the Strong Cities Network. That's another story to click and look at. These are fascinating. Strong Cities, Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations, Rothschild, all the connections are there in a third story. And here is a world list of the Agenda 2030 Strong Cities members. This is what this is all about. Strong Cities has to do with Agenda 2030, okay? In this country, the members, I may have missed one, but I don't think so. The members of the Strong Cities International TLC CFR Rothschild conglomerate are Los Angeles, Communist LA, Anaheim, and I pray for the soul of poor Walt Disney, San Diego, Pittsburgh, I'll talk to Henry Nyman about this, Louisville, Atlanta, Denver, and New York City. Those are the Strong cities in this country right now. If I missed any, we'll catch up to it later. Yeah, go.
You can add Minnesota to that.
Minneapolis.
Sorry. Yeah.
There we go. There we go. All right. Go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, but not only that, Melbourne is also the head office for ICLEI Oceania. And I won't go into what Oceania is.
Oh, yes. Nobody knows about this. Very few people. Thank you for bringing that up. I want all of you to pay attention. This is really important. Go. This is great.
ICLEI stands for, well, it used to stand for the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. It's changed its name more recently to hide what it does because people are beginning to wake up, and now it's called the Local Government for Sustainability. So whenever you hear the word sustainability, it's a buzzword, and it's a buzzword that comes out of ICLEI. And ICLEI is an NGO under the auspices of the United Nations, and its job is to implement Agenda 21, which is nowadays called Agenda 2030. So you will recognize these things, and let me just go back to strong cities so the people can recognize if they've got a strong city, as Victoria does. And you'll see your police force dressed in black. You'll see them carry assault weapons, as ours do now here in Melbourne. You'll see them sometimes driving around in black vehicles, helmets, riot gear. We had a protest which was brutally subdued and crushed over the weekend, and the police were dressed up in the Strong Cities uniform. They use Israeli policing techniques that were perfected in Gaza to subjugate and oppress the
Victor,
Palestinians.
many of our police departments, their chiefs have been flown over there, wined and dined and videotaped, no doubt, in hotel rooms with girls of comfort and trained in Israeli police brutality. And that's what they brought back here, and that's the same thing we're seeing here. It's universal. Go ahead.
Knee on the neck. That's one of the techniques, and that was the Floyd.
Right. That's right.
You saw. However, people will also recognize ICLEI in their cities, and you can look up if your city is an ICLEI city, and you'll notice it by the coloured garbage cans. You'll notice it by roundabouts. I'm not sure what they call them in the United States.
Those European roundabouts that they're putting in many cities here. That's another sign. Yeah, very interesting.
They call it traffic calming. But that's a sign that your city is succumbing to global governance. This is the beginning of it. So if you're seeing these things, you need to be looking out for them. Anybody starts talking about the buzzwords, sustainability, and also, climate change, global, that's part of it as well, of which this whole pandemic is a part of the whole climate change. But before I do, let me just go back to Melbourne. That's what this discussion was about. Just to let the listeners know what's happening here. We've got a curfew from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. You can't travel greater than 5 kilometres from your home. You cannot leave the city. You cannot leave the country. There's only 2 countries in the world that don't allow its citizens to travel outside the country, and that is North Korea and Cuba. Only one person from each household can shop at the nearest food store within 5 kilometres. We've got closed borders between the states, so there is no interstate travel, so you can't escape.
Oh, so Oregon and California, you don't go back and forth. The curfew, what does that mean? Does that mean nobody sticks their nose out the door between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m., was it?
5 a.m.
5
We've got
a.m.
police helicopters buzzing the city at the night.
So nobody goes out. That's it. You're in for the night, everybody.
That's it. Deserted.
House arrest.
Drones. Correct. Drones over the city. Police helicopters waking up the citizens, flying low over the city to remind them that, the warders are watching.
Noise and sleep deprivation. That's absolute torture.
Well, that's what they're doing. Work permits needed to travel. We've got limits on food and medicines, depending on what you're buying. Closed churches, school closures, no gyms or personal training. Masks are mandatory. Warrantless home searches. They can just barge into your home. No weddings, no gatherings, no family visits, limit of 10 at a funeral, military patrols on the street, removal of children if your child tests positive, censorship across all social media. Google and Twitter and the social media have gone crazy in this town. You mention anything that you're not supposed to mention, particularly say about a protest, and they'll hand over your details and your IP address to the authorities, and they'll be around your home in a flash with handcuffs.
Okay, hold on. All right, so if I'm over there and I'm on Facebook and I say there's a protest about lockdowns this Saturday at the park, I'm going to be there. Hope you can all come out. Facebook over there will report you to the government, and you're going to get visited and what? Arrested?
Well, correct. You've seen some of the videos on the page that I set up for you. Young woman pregnant with in front of her children, handcuffed. Another woman grabbed by the throat. You've seen some of the violence. 2 women sitting in the park in the sunshine had gone for a little bit of exercise, got a little bit tired, as you would, when you're 80s, and police harassing them, grabbing phones off them. I mean, it's just incredible. Yep.
And we have to go back to what you said earlier, Victor. Second Amendment, live or die. That's it. They take the guns, and we are going to snap on the leg irons, and we're done.
Correct. Now, look, there are some people in Victoria, which is the state I'm in, which Melbourne is the capital, that do have licensed guns for hunting. Not a lot, but there's a few. They've all been sent circulars and notices that if they're given an infringement notice, then they're considered to be a dissident and their guns are removed. They're getting visits at the moment, checking on their guns, ammunition. They're being watched because they fear any pushback.
Okay. It's all about fear. Same here. All about fear. Fear porn. It's all about fear.
Absolutely. I mean, the businesses are closed, limited retail and food online for some limited curbside pickup. There are supermarkets that are open, of course, but 3
But you
of them
can't go out to them after 8 o'clock at night.
Well, correct.
You're done.
Correct. Offices closed. I've got a friend of mine who's got a very large law practice in the city here, and his business has been slashed by 50% and crashing as we speak. He's leasing 2 floors of an office building, no staff in there. He's not allowed. He's been called and told that there's been rumours that he had staff in there and they were going to come and visit him, but all the staff are at home. Business is disappearing. Suicide's off the chart. Use of cash is discouraged. No face-to-face doctor's visits permitted, and police stop with papers, please. And if you fail to give your name and address, on go the handcuffs.
Just like that. Boom.
Yep, just like that. Well, you've seen the videos. You've seen
yes, it's all there. No, they're all going up on a big sheet here in headlines and news as well. What's happening there? I still go back. I think this is another beta test. Not that they need it. They game these things on supercomputers with AI. They know exactly what's going to happen in advance. They know, they profile the people, they feed the people, they condition the people with RF. They know what they're doing with food and GMOs. They understand the constant brainwashing from the media. So they know in advance, but they still game these things. So they'll take a plan like the one we're talking about that Victor's explaining so well, roll it out, test it officially, and look at the results, and that's going to be the template that will be used all over the world. Understand, they're watching Victoria very carefully.
Absolutely.
How the people respond.
In fact, this is about the Great Reset, which you know about: financial reset, cultural, social,
right.
Which we won't go into today. Otherwise, we'll be here.
I want to go through this break, Todd. Please, thank you. Just go ahead and yeah, very good. Go on, Victor.
However, the vaccine is, and that's what they want, because they want us ID'd and controlled. And under the cover of this curfew, here in Australia, they've been flying in cameras and face recognition equipment from China, because our premier here, which is your governor in your terms, is closely aligned to the Chinese, very closely, has sold out the state, sold out the port to the Chinese. He's having infrastructure built here with Chinese money. He's got agreements with the Chinese that he won't make public and won't tell the citizens what he signed and what we've signed up for. We've got his name's Daniel Andrews. The guy is a criminal. He's the only best description. In fact, at the moment, they're trying to remove him, his own party, because they're so disaffected and they know that they're not going to get through the next election. Unfortunately, we don't have gubernatorial recalls here like you have in the United States. You've got 19 states that have gubernatorial recalls, and I think the last one was Gray Davis when Arnold Schwarzenegger took over in 2003.
Oh, no, they got the signatures out and they got the petitions together and they did it. Yeah.
Yep. Nearly 900,000 people. 12% of the voters are needed, but we don't have that here, unfortunately. And so this guy can't be removed. I don't know where the jackal is when you need him, but unfortunately, he's not around and he's ensconced. He's moved his family outside of the state to another state of Australia called Queensland because they've had real and credible death threats. He's surrounded 24 hours a day by police and a protected guard. There are people here that are committing suicide, and as a result, on the way out, they would like to take him out. So he's been ensconced and hidden away. Because his life is in real danger.
Interesting. Yeah.
I don't know what they're going to get him with because they certainly don't have guns. Maybe a water pistols.
I don't. I'm not surprised to hear any of this. And seriously, when people get to the point where they're ready to check out, a lot of them will want to take out the clear and present danger that is causing them so much strife, and everybody's strife.
As your next guest will say, and I understand you've got Gerald Salente on next.
Yeah.
As he famously says, when people lose everything, they lose it.
Yeah.
And that's where we are now. We are on the precipice here in the state of Victoria. If this governor, this premier, Daniel Andrews, doesn't go, I'm afraid there will be one incendiary event. Just like you saw in that film, V for Vendetta, that, by the way, was set in 2020 with a pandemic underlying what was happening, with a tyrant. It was one incendiary event that sent the whole place up. And I'm afraid we're at that point here. Unfortunately, though, Australians, and contrary to what most Americans think, they think that we're laconic, laid back, friendly. But in actual fact, Australians are supine, spineless, and cowardly. And I'd hate to say that about the people of my nation, but it comes from the fact that we started as a penal colony, and prisoners in penal colonies, and their most famous one was at Port Arthur in Tasmania, which is an island off Victoria in the south of the country. And the prisoners don't have anything. The only thing they can trade is information about each other, with the wardens or the guards. And for any type of concession. And as a result, Australians defer to authority. They dob, and that's an Australian colloquialism for spying on each other, telling each other. And as soon as somebody's doing better than the other person,
snitch. We call it snitch here.
Snitch, correct. So what they do is as soon as someone's doing better than the other person, they figure that they are a snitch. And it's called the tall poppy syndrome. He's doing better than me. He must be doing something wrong. We better pull him down back to my level. That's Australians for you. That's the culture.
How sad. How sad.
Well, unfortunately, it works.
What a morally depraved people Australians are, many of them.
Well, it works fabulous for the for the controllers. Look, fortunately, we have a large migrant population here, and we have some very brave people that have come from very disturbed parts of the world. We have a lot of Syrians, Turks, Lebanese, and these people have seen oppression. They're used to it, and as a result, that's where the spine is at the moment. Some of these younger men have heard the stories from their parents about what they fled from, and they are pushing back as best they can, but they're being brutally subdued. The police are going in there and just crushing them, but these men are unarmed, so there's not much they can do.
Victor, I can say one thing with 100% certainty. Americans, 99 point whatever percent you want to use, have no idea about what's happening in your country. None. And this is invaluable information. And it all started, dear friends, with the removal of the right to own and bear arms for your own self-protection, the protection of your family and your loved ones. They took it away. How many times have we talked about this? Every single time that has happened on this planet, the people have ended up in utter bondage and subservience, groveling. And that's what's happening over there, and worse.
You got it. Look, Australia is an outpost of the United States, of the deep state. It's a globalist outpost, still beholden to the City of London and the ultimate controllers, the financial controllers of our planet. Probably the seminal book that was written on this issue of global banking, but more importantly, the Federal Reserve, but was written by a friend of yours, G. Edward Griffin, with the Creature of Jekyll Island. And I urge any listeners to see if you can find that book, because that explains how the banking system works. My career was originally started in newspapers, and I worked for one of the local dailies here as a young man, and just got out because of the disgust of what I saw. Because it is control. The media and what the people read is control. They think they're reading a free press, and that's garbage. And I've seen that firsthand.
Victor, I honor you for that. And I quit television news. I had a great career going for the same exact reason. I saw where it was going. I wanted nothing to do with it. And there are many others. You won't hear their names, but there are others who have walked away from that business too. Journalism here is whoredom. These people are all whores, or they wouldn't be on the air. Believe it. It's that simple.
As Gerald calls them, prostitutes.
Yeah.
Gerald Slante calls them. Yep, you got it. But I went into banking and real estate, and that's when my eyes really opened up, when I worked out how the system works. Well, I saw it from the inside, and I was able to use the system, and I did very well and built myself a great career and made a lot of money out of it. That took me to places like Beijing. I worked in Beijing there with a very large legal firm that was originally owned by the Communist Party. And that's another story from the inside. But I was able to get a handle on what was happening in banking, and I could see that was one of the control mechanisms. That is not where the control comes from, but that is one of the control mechanisms. As G. Edward Griffin will tell you, that above that is something else. And I met with Ed at Thousand Oaks, his home in Thousand Oaks, some years ago, and we had a discussion, a little bit like this one. And I said to Ed, look, what's really going on? What's happening? This seems to be all unconnected, but where's the hidden hand? And because I'm not a conspiracy theorist in the sense that I don't believe that there's people in a dark room somewhere pulling strings, pressing buttons on a supercomputer, determining our destiny. The world is too disorganized. People have their own self-interest. And Ed agreed with me. because there is something above that. And this is something that permeates all human beings, particularly the psychopaths in our society and in our civilization. And this is where evil just overtakes people with Faustian bargains. You often hear, celebrities talk about the Faustian bargain, the deal with the devil.
They admit it.
For the celebrity.
They absolutely admit it, Victor. It's right there
Absolutely.
on video. You can see it.
Yep. And look, I got to tell you, you some years ago, you had a very rare audio clip of Michael Jackson talking about essentially a deal that he did with a certain group of people that turned out to be a Faustian bargain. And when I heard that, it resonated with me because I was in New York and I was talking to some bankers. I was borrowing a fairly sizable sum of money for a project, and I was talking to some bankers from a company called Fortress, a large investment bank, and they just lent him $250 million at the time, and this is what led to his death ultimately. And they were celebrating the $15 million commission they got out of that deal, having taken his Neverland Ranch and Sony Music Hartley library that he owned as security. And then, of course, in an attempt to pay that money back, which he couldn't because he just wasn't up to it, he tried to get a gig in Vegas at one of the casinos. A friend of mine, Jack Wishner, who was a friend of Donald's, tried to get him a gig, but he just wasn't up to it. But they pushed him into this world tour thing, and it took him out, as you might know. So those Faustian bargains do exist; they're real, and you can see what happens when you go off the reservation and you begin to talk about the deal you did with the devil. And G. Edward Griffin said to me, "Look," he said, "Victor, you got to understand." He said to me that this is a spiritual battle. It's thousands of years old. It's as simple as good and evil. No more complicated than that. And we've got people that are possessed by evil, empty people, empty eyes that hate humanity, and they're doing the work of the devil. Do they know? They check in every morning, on the devil's time clock? No, but these people are possessed. They've got evil and darkness in their heart. And that's what we've got. And we had one of those people here in Melbourne. If you want to talk about him, this is McFarlane Burnett. This is a fascinating story.
No, let's we could spend an hour on this, but we'll take our time. We've got time. McFarlane Burnett. This name is not familiar it wasn't familiar to me before Victor brought it up. I don't think many of you know about it. Tell us the story. Now, you're not going to believe the timeline, okay? You'll get the science and the techniques, but the timeline when this happened originally is going to be a surprise. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, as Ed said, this runs over decades because how do you hand over a master plan, or how do you drive humanity towards an end? You can't do it generationally. People have their own lives to lead, so it's done through evil that lives within the hearts of generations of men. And McFarlane Burnett was one of them. Now, the reason I came in contact with him is because I bought a house, and it so happened to be his home, as I came to find out. And I did a lot of work to it.
Home?
You can see it on. Yeah, I bought his home. Yeah, and I did some work to it, and I transformed the home, but I sensed the darkness in that home, and I thought, what's happening here? And I didn't quite know what it was, and I said to my wife at the time, look, I think I'm going to get a priest in here, and we're going to conduct an exorcism of this house. There's something going on in this house. And she thought I was nuts, but subsequently what happened was she and I parted. Everybody that's owned the house has had bad things happen to them. The last time that the house was sold, the owner lost $1.5 million. I sold it for $4.25 back in 2016. He sold it last year for $1.5 million less after what it cost him. So it was a house of evil. It was paid for with a Nobel Prize, actually, money from 1960, which McFarlane Burnett, who was a Victorian born in Traralgon in 1899, and he died in 1985. And people might say, well, what's that got to do with today? Well, let me draw the timeline to today and to Bill Gates, because there is a connection. he studied at the University of Melbourne and graduated as a Bachelor of Science and became an MD in 1923. He went on to work for the Walter Eliza Hall Institute, which is a division and aligned with the University of Melbourne, to do research work on algorithmic reactions of typhoid fever. In 1936, he isolated the influenza strain A. So this guy's an influenza expert as well. Now, that's going to be important, as you're going to see in a minute. He got an honorary doctorate from the University of Cambridge, was a Royal College of Surgeons, so he's got a London link here. And he also has a link to the Eugenics Society of London, of which Bill Gates Sr. is a member. They knew each other. Bill Gates Sr. went on with Margaret Sanger to help establish Planned Parenthood. Bill Gates Sr. was a board member of Planned Parenthood that since 1971 has killed over 20 million babies, according to the CDC. The biggest killer of black lives in the United States is not police, it's not white people, it's not even black people, it's abortion. And yet not a word is spoken about this. And these are sacrifices.
We might also mention that those babies are not just thrown in the trash or incinerated. They're cut up, they're parsed,
correct,
they're strained, they're centrifuged, whatever. They sell off almost every part of that little baby for a profit.
Correct. So he went on to win the Nobel Prize for Physiology and Medicine in 1960, and then he retired in 1978, but he then handed over to a protege called Gustav Nossel, who still lives in Melbourne, actually, not far from the home that I bought and where Macfarlane Burnett lived. And he took over the Walter Eliza Hall at 35 years of age until 1996. And then he went on to become chairman of the committee of overseeing the World Health Organization's vaccination and biologicals program. And he became a chairman of the Strategic Advisory Council of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So he carried on essentially the work of Macfarlane Burnett. Now, so what was the work Macfarlane Burnett did? Well, this is it. And
this
I hope
is the
people
big
are sitting
one.
down.
Yeah.
Correct. Australia had just been through World War II in 1945, and they were worried about the teeming hordes of Asia coming down and overrunning Australia. Australia had already prepared for the overrunning of Australia by drawing what was called the Brisbane Line, a line across about halfway up from Australia and handing it over to the Japanese in the event that we had to surrender to the Japanese. But they were very concerned about the teeming hordes, and particularly of the Indonesians, but more particularly about the Chinese. They were aware of what the Japanese had done with biologicals, with bubonic plague and so forth in China. And so the Australians wanted to develop their own biological weapons program to wipe out the Chinese. And get this, with an influenza strain, a coronavirus. Now, this guy was the leading virologist in the world, Nobel Prize winner. So they called him in to Victoria Barracks, and people who live in Melbourne would know that. That's in St Kilda Road. It's one of the main promenades in Melbourne. And there was defence chiefs there from the UK and the United States. And they listened to his plan. And what he was going to do, he was going to target a virus, a coronavirus, to hit the Chinese. Now, they said at the time, well, how do we know it's not going to blow back? Which is obvious, naturally. And so they said, look, maybe, when you can target a virus, come back and see us. Great idea, but not yet. So what he did is he went off and joined with the CSIRO, which is a government research organisation, to solve a problem that had something to do with wiping out the Chinese. And that was, how do we target a virus that just targets one species, one particular type of people? One particular type of mammal. And so we had a rabbit problem here in Australia, a big rabbit problem that was affecting the primary industry. And so he developed, in conjunction with the CSIRO, with his work, he developed a myxomatosis virus. And this was a virus that specifically targeted rabbits. Now, I want you to think about this. How about a virus that specifically targets one type of class of person, say Chinese or blacks? So this is the work he started doing.
And what? Give us a year, the time frame again on this, just so we know.
Well, we're in the
time
50s
frame
now.
We're in the 50s
now.
So the point is here, let me, one quick thing, Victor. What Victor is saying, and I want everyone to understand this, is that back as far as the 1950s, 70 years ago, they were thinking about and they were building designer bioweapons that could specifically only target and take out racial or other groups, people with black hair, people with blue eyes. It doesn't matter. That's where this was going 70 years ago. Imagine where it is now. Please continue.
Well, what happened is that he became more radical as he moved in these circles, and his plan was rejected because of the blowback that we spoke about. And he continued his work, and he continued his writings, and his writings became more radical. And he was a eugenicist, a white supremacist eugenicist. He wrote a number of books which discredited his fine reputation that he'd had with the public up until then. And it was clear that this man believed that the planet was overpopulated with the wrong people. Now, you can imagine, of course, is that Bill Gates has often said that, he got his education around the dinner table. And if you've heard that interview, he speaks about how he listened to his father and his mother as they spoke about eugenics and then ultimately about depopulation to save the planet, which, of course, then morphed into, as you know, the Club of Rome, Limits to Growth, which morphed into what we know as Agenda 21. Bill Gates had this dream. And the dream, of course, was one of the Georgia Guidestone speaks about reducing the population of the planet. As you know, he was ushered into great wealth through Microsoft and IBM that his mother had a connection with. So he got a free ride. This guy was not a genius. Don't make that mistake at all. This guy was guided to greatness. And then he gained great wealth, and then with the likes of a number of other people, Warren Buffett, George Soros, all the usual criminals. His goal was to find a way to control the world's population. Now, this is a guy that couldn't keep a virus off Windows and has no medical qualifications at all, yet today he's seen as, the font of all medical knowledge. And here he is vaccinating people in Africa, India, where he's run out of India for killing over 400,000 people. Vaccines, and look, I should make this clear, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. Vaccines do have its place, don't get me wrong. And a good, safe vaccine has its place, absolutely no question. But when vaccines are used for nefarious purposes or for money-making purposes and control, as in Bill Gates' instance, then that's dangerous. I spent a lot of time in the Philippines. I have a home there, and I was involved with the dengue vaxxia fiasco that killed over 600 people in 2017 before they suspended that. And that's another story, because the people who produced that vaccine, Sanofi Pasteur, by the way, these were the same people that built the biolab in Wuhan, Biolab 4. It was done by Sanofi Pasteur. And the last great kill-off we had, and they killed 600 before the Filipinos woke up what was happening, and the parents of these dead kids were protesting, and so they stopped. They would have gone through the whole childhood population of the Philippines if they'd been left to their own devices. So Macfarlane Burnett had this dream, and he educated a protege. That protege went on and worked for Bill Gates. So Bill Gates and that connection, make no mistake, this man does not have good intentions for you. Absolutely not. Do not take these RNA, DNA altering vaccines. These are not antibodies these are vaccines that eventually turn on your body. They will attack you.
They'll change your genetics. You'll become no longer a natural born human being. You'll be a GMO. You will be a genetically modified organism. To do their beck and call service is you're going to be under their thumb, totally, genetically.
It's a key and lock system. The lock being the vaccine, the key being a virus, and it can be a fairly benign virus, but one that is contagious and bingo, bingo, this is what the coronavirus is, very contagious, but doesn't necessarily kill people with strong immune systems who are younger. But once you've had the virus, it undoes the lock, and bingo, cancers and deaths of all kind. And this meets the depopulation agenda of Bill Gates, the great dream that he carried on from his father, Margaret Sanger, the eugenicist that came out of the 19th century. That's where we're going with this. And Melbourne is ground zero. This is where they're going to give the people the vaccine. There was a lot of pushback recently when the Prime Minister, which is like your president, told Australians that we were all going to get the vaccine. They pushed back and said, no way, where there's risk, there must be choice. And so he backpedaled. However, they're going to use coercion. The coercion techniques have already been trialled here. No jab, no play, they call it. In other words, if your kids don't get vaccines, you don't get government benefits. You can't send them to kindergarten, blah, blah, blah. And they're going to do the same thing here with respect to travel, entering restaurants, government buildings, jobs, a whole lot. You will become a social and economic outcast. No man shall buy or sell without the mark of the beast. If you don't have the COVID-19 certificate of vaccination 19, which stands for AI, and that's how they're going to run the system. AI.
That's why they picked AI. Oh, I didn't know. Okay, I got it. Yeah.
That's what it stands for. Because you need to understand that COVID-19 didn't exist. The terminology didn't exist until early February when the WHO named it. Yet this COVID-19 was around last year and before, as you very well know. This is not something that came from nowhere. And I could give people references, even here in Australia, where to look for that name in government documents before it was even released publicly by the World Health Organization in the beginning of February 2019. This is a plandemic. It's not a pandemic. And they're using the crushing brutality in Melbourne as a beta test for the rest of you. Now, America will escape this because if patriots resist with their weapons, then you guys will escape. It doesn't mean that your nation will remain as a whole. You may have secession movements with states breaking up. And
you're singing my song. Oh,
yeah, that's
secession is imperative. I don't care if it's state by state, county by county, region by region. This country is going to be balkanized, or it will cease to exist at all in its current form.
Well, that's happening already. California, northern part of California, looking at breaking up. Even your state.
Yeah.
There's been interest. And there are some states that are still independent and would go their own way. But then what you're talking about is just total dislocation, and you remove America off the world stage. Now, you can imagine if America's off the world stage and the paragon of liberty, which your Constitution
fills the void?
Absolutely. Your Constitution Bill of Rights is probably the greatest document ever written, except for the Bible. Then the rest of us are doomed. If you go down, we are screwed. The rest of us are screwed. And this is a plan to take down the United States. And this is what Antifa's about. This is Black Lives Matters is about. And if you have a look at the people that are behind Black Lives Matters, and it's the LGTB group, there's the pedophile group that's just another life choice. It's
just another lifestyle, friends. Don't worry about it. Just lifestyle. Yeah. That's all it is.
I mean, we have a deep and entrenched pedophile network that runs this country, and it runs it at the highest levels. In fact, I do have some stuff on the website. I gave you some of the resources. I've got a speech by one of our senators 5 years ago that just outed 28 of our most senior politicians that belong to a pedophile group. In fact, one of our former prime ministers was a pedophile. In fact, a number of them were pedophiles, to tell the truth. One of them's daughters was involved with Epstein and Giselle Maxwell. So pedophilia is the control mechanism. It's the control file that they use for these people. And it runs deep into the judiciary. It runs deep into our political classes. And it runs deep into our administrative and bureaucratic classes. They protect each other. And Australians think that their politicians are doing their bidding when the truth is other than
Not a
that.
chance. There really is no such thing as a representative government in any first world country. It doesn't happen. It's a fake.
No.
It's a sham. It's a
No,
hoax.
no. We have selections. We don't have elections.
That's right. I want to say one thing. What Victor just said a couple of minutes ago is extremely important. As the United States goes, so goes the rest of the free world. Hell, the whole world. And he's right. They're all watching to see if America will stand up and reject what is being forced down its throat. Thank you for saying that and so many other things. Great to have you on, Victor. Would you like to come back? You're more than welcome. We got a lot to talk about, so just let me know.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Just, you know where to contact me.
You bet. All right, my friend. Take care. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much.
Terrific.
Good night.
Good night. Victor Altomare, and there you go. It's right there. Doesn't get any more clear than that.